first question I would have for you to get started with is just, walk me through your journey. When you were a player, what kind of took you to wanting to be a coach and manager, and how did that process all work for you?
Well, funny enough, I'm from a little area just outside of a place called Wigan, which you may have heard of, you may not have, but it's a rugby town, really, and it's not really a football or soccer town. So really, my first love was rugby league, and but as you can see, my stature wasn't big enough to play rugby. But I did play. I played the rugby game for quite a while. But the older I got, I was obviously a little bit more talented in football. And from there on, I went. I played for Wigan before they ever got into the non-league. Before they ever got into the league, they were a non-league player club. And then I was scouted by Bury. And from then on, it was like a big journey for me, really. I've been all over the country playing and managing, but playing in particular, from Brighton to Nottingham Forest to Sheffield Wednesday, Barnsley, etc., Brighton and Hove Albion. So my family's been they've been pulled all over the country, really, and then taking on the management side of it, which is. Actually, I was managed longer than I actually played. I think I played about 700 games, but I've fortunately been managing up until the last year or so for about 1,200 games. So I was actually a manager longer than I was a player, which is unusual, really, in this climate. Yep. But here we are now.
And was there a point in your playing career that you kind of developed a real interest to get into coaching or managing, or was it something you kind of just fell into and developed from there?
I was always interested, of course I was, but I think sometimes I was blessed with being able to captain quite a few clubs that I played for, and when you have that little bit of trust from the management for you, it gives you a bit of a more insight into what's expected you as a player. So I studied quite a lot of the managers, and how it was they were treating players, or how they would go down certain areas of certain problems, or certain teams they played against, what strategy they would have. And it intrigued me. But I never thought for 1 minute I'd be a footballer until I played for Luton, and we had a successful team at Luton, where we had a lot of internationals we played for us at the time, and we had a fantastic run in for about 3 years where we beat Manchester United in the cup final, and we went there 3 times. In that respect, we finished 6th in the league, in the Premier League, the first division, which was not heard of for a team of our size. And some people kept telling me, then you're going to go into management, and this is long before I even finished. I had another 4 years at Sheffield Wednesday after that, so I never really thought of going into management. And then it came out of the blue, really, when I went to from Sheffield Wednesday to Barnsley with the very famous Viv Anderson, who Viv's a very big friend of mine, the first black player to play for England. And from then on, it was, we never looked back.
Luton was my local club growing up. I grew up in the small town of Leighton Buzzard, just down the road. Wow. And those days are long gone for that Luton Town team. It seems like Kenilworth Road is still standing somehow.
Well, it's amazing, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, well, you know the history of my background there from the Luton days. It's So I mean, I had a fantastic time while I was there.
And I would say, just from a personal note, I actually enjoyed Wigan Warriors when it came to the rugby league and rugby union growing up, even though they made me play rugby a lot when I was young as well.
Oh, I can imagine, yes. Yeah. And the rugby league was my code as well.
Yeah. So having seen all of that, and I guess studying the other managers and the coaches, what would you say that is the most important quality that I guess you had, or that you saw in other coaches and managers that allowed them to operate at that top level?
Well, I think, every level really, Sean. I think you at every level, but especially at elite level, you need preparation. You've got to prep the team, and you've got to prep the club in certain ways, and that really depends on the personalities or the personnel you've got at your disposal. I don't think you can ever have any rigid ideas. I think you've got to be quite flexible in what you do. The biggest thing that I learned from a lot of managers was just to listen, just watch and listen, and try and digest the good things that you want to think that you want to take on board, and the ones who don't, just put them to one side. You know, it was that was always thing that was always have. But when you get to the elite level, when you get to the Premier League, as we're talking about now, or international level, players are always going to test you. They always test you. They test your training, they test your philosophy, they test your ideals or what you think football should be played and how they should be playing. So if you've listened, you've learned a lot about the philosophy of the player himself who you're dealing with, you've got a better chance of being successful with that. If you're going in, you know, and you're not really listening to people and you're just doing your own thing and you're completely self-conscious about only thing that you want to do, you will have a problem. And that was the biggest thing I had. You get to open up and communicate, and that's what I learned to do. You know, I thought that I think the personalities that's involved in football clubs, the higher you get, you know, they certainly have more forceful opinions, and you want to find those personalities out, who they are, and who in the club themselves, which players respond to that type of player. And they don't always have to be the best players either. You know, they could be the captain of the team who's very, very great at organising, or is very outspoken type of thing on the pitch. So it doesn't always have to be your star player. You know, it's sometimes somebody you don't really expect, but it's very forceful in dressing room. And I think once you get them on side, that was one thing I learned as well. You know, senior players, young players will always will tend to go with what the manager says. Older players will ask a question. And I think you've got to be prepared for that.
Do you find that has changed over the time since you started managing until now, with, I guess, the advent in social media and I guess maybe entitlement in younger people as this come through? Have you seen that change from when you started coaching this and now?
It has changed, Sean. I don't believe it's anything to do with younger people. I think it's the aspect of overseas players coming to join us, and they've brought with them some fantastic ideas with them as well. And their philosophy of the game is different than ours at times. Not always, but sometimes, and for the better as well. You know, they've taught us so many things, and I think that you know, we couldn't go on thinking that English football was the only way to play football, because it's been proved wrong since 1966, as we know. And I think that we've got to respect that, you know, and for what the people have, or the boys, and the management and the coaches that's brought from overseas into our football have been fantastic, and the majority of things have been fantastic, and I think that's helped us to learn and helped us to promote our game, but certainly get better at the top level.
Obviously there's been some kind of not a shift necessarily, but more of a pointed look now at development of culture, when you see coaches like Jurgen Klopp and even Guardiola, where the relationship with the players, as you mentioned previously, has become, you know, hyper important in developing that culture and having the right personalities and the right people in the dressing room, be that staff or be that players. How important was that when you went into a new dressing room to kind of develop that culture? And how was it when you went into an existing dressing room where you were new to create that?
I'll go back again slightly and touch on what I said at first, Sean, really, is that I think you've got to understand what you're going into. You've got to prepare yourself and understand, you know, the philosophy of the club itself, but certainly from the community that you're going into. I mean, if you've been over a period of years, if you've been, as a fan, if you've been privileged to watch Premiership football, you know, throughout your career, or throughout your life, I should say, you're going to have a different outlook than somebody in an urban area who's never come out of second division or the first division. And it's a totally different concept. And I think first and foremost, to go into a football club, you've got to understand what type of environment you're going into. Not the football club, but certainly the community as well, and what they expect. Now, you know, if you're looking at possibly going into a working class area, you know, the things they want grittiness, they'll want hard work and commitment, and, you know, and respect, etc. I'm not saying the big clubs don't want that; they do want that, but that's the first prerequisite, really, in a club that's outside the Premier League. The Premier League want that, but they also got the quality as well, you know, which maybe you as a Championship first or second division club don't have the you don't have the luxury of that. So I think whichever club you're going into, you're going to go into a different environment every one you go to, which I found out. You never take them all for granted that they're the same. Now, when you go into the type of play that you're dealing with, is as different as a day's night, in two different clubs. You'll never have the same dynamic at one club that you have another. You can try and make it the same. If you had a good dynamic you left in your last club, you can try and get the next one again, but that will take time.
And if you had characters in that dressing room, players, staff, weren't willing or able to change, and were actively working against this, like I said, culture you're trying to create, or against the culture of the community, how did you find the best way to deal with those? Was it move them on? Was it try and re-educate them? What did you find to be the most effective way?
Well, you know what, Sean, there's different ways of approaching. Every manager will have his own way of doing certain things. My personal approach was, if you had a certain way of you wanted to play, a certain philosophy, if you like, that you wanted to play and how you wanted to play it, and somebody wasn't fitting into that or contributing to that, there's different ways of how can I say, getting to the bottom of the situation as to why they won't do it or they can't do it. There's one way or the other. They both mean the same at the end in my eyes, but you've got to find out if they can't do it or they won't do it. Now, if you've exhausted everything that you've asked him, it could be something off the pitch. It could be something that is going on in his family life. You don't know, that's very private, that's getting him down, and he's just not responding in training. It could be anything you need. But once you've exhausted all that and he's still not doing it, get rid. Because the rest of the players have to see you as the manager, as the boss, and they will only give you the respect as strong you are. Now, as I was saying there, you're giving the player every opportunity to say this is wrong, I can't do this, and blah, blah, blah. Fantastic. Listen, let's move on for each other. You go and do it, and we don't always move on, in a bad way. You can live your best of friends if you like, but you've got to understand you've exhausted everything that could possibly be wrong with that situation. Now, if it's still not right, thanks very much. We move on, and then you try and you're recruiting what you need to. Yeah.
Recruitment. We had Steve McLaren on a little while ago, and he mentioned that when he was working with Sir Alex at Manchester United, that one of the big things that Sir Alex did when he was looking to recruit people was to really get a good gauge with their character, their personality. How important is that to you when looking to recruit either players or staff that you're going to be working with, and how do you go about the process of, I guess, attaining someone's character to ensure that they're the right fit for what you're trying to do?
Listen, we're all the same. Sir Alex as well will look at the player just as the same as I would, believe it or not. The difference being is that he will have 100 scouts out there to be able to do that. We have maybe one or two at the lower level. And, I'm not saying we didn't have that at one stage. I've had it in the Premier League when I've managed there. And it's a lot easier to be able to find out somebody's character when you're getting 30, 40 reports coming in. Than just one person going watching one game and saying he's a good player. What's his character like? Didn't really see that. I don't know him. So then your network that's across the globe will give you the information that you're striving for, and that's the luxury that Alex has got, or the big clubs have. The elite clubs, they'll have that. But you do want that, yeah. You want your character of the player. You want to be able to trust him. You want him to take responsibility on, to know his role and to be understanding of what his role is within the side. And once you get that, you can leave them alone. The top players, you can just leave them alone. They don't need coaching. They're terrific players. You'll tell them once and they get on with it, which I'm sure you've heard many times. The lower league players, you need to keep reminding them, and you're on with them every day. It seems so repetitive. You get a little bit bored with it, but it's the only way sometimes. But the top players only once, and they'll get on with it.
You mentioned previously principles of play and the philosophy. How did that work for you when you were going, like I said, moving from club to club? Did you have your own personal philosophy, how you wanted to play, or was that dictated by players that were there, or, like I said, the aspect of the club that you were going into? Because obviously some clubs have certain expectations of how you're going to play and what you're looking for as part of their culture. But did you have any specific set of, I guess, principles of play or philosophy that you wanted to try and impart in every team that you worked with, or was it?
Well, to say that, yes, I did have a principle and way of play. The managers I've always played for, have been players who like to play expansive football. Again, bearing in mind I'm not 6'4", like you know, so I had to play football rather than be physical. So the managers that always brought me into their teams was always into a team that played football, and which I've tried to take that on board and take that with me as I got through the management. I think it really dictates though when you get to a football club as a manager what the dynamic of the team is already. You know, if you're going into a Premier League club, there's a chance you can change it. There's a chance you've got the money and the finances to be able to change it. The lower down you go, you've got less and less chance. You know, and if you're in the bottom rung of the football league, you've got very little chance. And I think that dictates then, you know, your philosophies, and you have to really understand and get to know the personalities of the players. Then, you know, that you can't be asking players to do something that you're just not capable of doing. Otherwise, you're causing more problems to the team. And then that dictates the type of football that you have to play. If you've got a big physical side, to get them organised and to get them difficult to be beaten is quite easy. You could get them in a rigid formation that makes it very difficult. If you're trying to turn them into a technical team, it's going to take a lot longer and a lot more hours on the training ground, as you appreciate. But at the same time, it can be done. And I've been fortunate that I've done it a few times, you know. But with that, I've been given the patience by the football club or the owners, the chairman, whatever it may be, to be given the time to do it. Without the time, you've got no chance.
Having worked at the highest levels and also worked at all levels of the football pyramid, have you seen the benefit of bringing younger players in early, especially if you're working with a lower league club? And you mentioned, you know, sometimes the technical level isn't so high. Trying to recruit young players who are maybe on the fringes of first team squads in the Premier League to try and give that technical boost to your team to help them in terms of their career, but also your team with what they're lacking in the area.
Young players, like I said, with young players, I love them. I love bringing youth into a team. I love bringing youth into the training program. If you've got some lads who some of your youth team or your reserve team managers pushing, and he said you've got to have a look at him. Go and look at him. Sometimes the reserve team manager doesn't understand first team level of physicality or intensity, and he thinks because his lad's playing well every week against his peers of his same age, then you know it's sometimes easy to fall into the trap that he's ready for the first team. But what we used to always do, and I always have done, I'll go on to something else in a minute, which is quite relative really, is that when you bring a young boy in, you can test them against the senior players in training, and you can see the characters then. You know, if they're not put off by the physicality, you know, if they're not put off by the verbals, if you like, that's going to get on his nerves, they are absolutely fantastic in training. They've got so much enthusiasm, no fear at all in what they do. The enthusiasm is absolutely brilliant. The energy is fantastic. So I used to always like bringing them in and giving them a chance to play. I mean, throughout my career, I've been very proud to watch the progress of lots of players that's come through, like, you know, and you know, it gives me great pride when I watch them on TV myself and say, you know, I had a little bit of part to that. The players did everything themselves, but at least you give them a chance. So taking it into youth is fantastic. And I just think at the moment in time, in this last few years, Gareth Southgate didn't go with the old thing. He didn't go what's supposed to do and what he's supposed to do. Like Wayne Rooney at the time was an England regular. And, you know, he broke all that system up. And what he did, he brought in the likes of Tammy Abraham and who else was there? There was Tammy Abraham, there was Harry Maguire, all people like this, like Harry Winks, Chilwell at Leicester. He gave them a chance. Everybody went, whoa, you know, this is not right. They could get a hammer in here. And all of a sudden now they've warmed to it. But not only that, the bigger picture for me, really, Sean, is that when you look now and you look at the Premier League and the Championship in particular, the amount of young players that are in their sides now that's been given the managers at those football clubs have got the confidence to put them in without any fear. I think Gareth Southgate has a lot to be complimented on. He's giving people a lot of chance to not worry about what people think. Is he too young? No, he's not too young. And I think that's a great boost for young lads in any football club now. there is a pathway. You know, I don't understand how millions and millions of pounds are spent on academies and they don't use them. You know, they just don't use them. Chelsea's fantastic now. Frank Lampard's got in there as a young one, and he's putting young ones in. It's fantastic from a young player who's coming into the game to see that because he thinks he's got a chance, and not they're going to buy, you know, somebody from overseas that's worth £10 million or whatever.
We've seen since, I guess, Project Restart, that addition of the 2 extra substitutes coming in. That seems to have given a lot of opportunities for young players. I know Liverpool are in a position now where they can be a bit more relaxed in terms of results. But we've seen Curtis Jones at the weekend, Harvey Elliott, Nico Williams coming in and playing more. I think that that's something that could be looked at to be expanded upon into next season beyond this 5 subs, with 2 of them being youth academy prospects only.
Sean, there's 2 sides to this. You'll have the, yes, of course it's great for the young lads. Of course it's great to be in the environment and sit around the top players in the dressing room on a match day. It's brilliant. And when the fans come back in front of 50,000 people, you couldn't ask for anything more. But what you're forgetting really is a lot of teams don't carry squads like that. So the smaller clubs, the Burnleys of this world, whoever it may be, they don't have the luxury of having that quality on the bench. So the game itself is a little bit unfair. That they can make the top quality the top quality substitutions where others can't. And I think that in itself may be a little bit of a disadvantage to teams who are not in the elite top 6 or 8 positions. The process of doing that is brilliant. I think, yes, of course it is. Get them in the first team environment as quick as you can and see how they deal with it. But there's a flip side to that where the clubs outside of that area maybe won't agree with it.
Of course. Everything's always weighted towards the big clubs, it seems, and that's one thing that would always advantage them as well.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of coaches involved in this process who are coaching at, you know, academy level, either professionally or in a grassroots capacity. So how, when it came to that promotion of youth, how involved were you when you were at the in terms of the setup of the academy? Did you have the academy teams playing in the same way as the first team to make the transition as smooth as possible? How many opportunities would you have given to train for the kids in the, you know, U19s in the reserves to come and train with the first team as part of your overseeing of that whole process?
I didn't give them a formation to play. Never gave them a certain way of playing. I think the challenge is from a manager's point of view. If the academy manager is getting the best out of the kids in the best positions, they'll be a better judge than I will. And if we have a rigid system in the first team, yes, we want lads to be able to come in and understand the position. But I don't think at that age you've got the true positions. They're so flexible. Harry Maguire is a fantastic example. We had him as a kid at Sheffield United, and he was a midfield player, you know, and he's transitioned back to the centre back. Now, if that was the only position he would have ever been able to play was midfield, he possibly wouldn't have a career now. But he's found his area where he's excelled in. So I would always give the academy coaches, managers freedom. Just put the players in the positions you think they should play in whatever system you want, but just get them used to playing and see where they can excel and in what position. So that, you know, I was, yes, I've always part of it. I still think the players still have to have a freedom. They have to have a freedom to express themselves, not be rigid. Like I was saying before about management, you can't be rigid, you've got to be fluent and just give them the freedom to go and play and let's see what they can do. Because I think if you're holding players back, you'll never ever know what they're capable of.
And from the coach's perspective, how involved were they in the whole process? See, they're coaching their own group, their younger age groups, but were they able to come and oversee the first team training? Were they able to be part of that process so they could see in the longer term what the vision was for where you wanted the players to be when they came to you, and to give them that taste of progression that potentially they could be aiming for as well as coaches?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've over the period of my career, been a manager, I've promoted so many academy managers, stroke coaches, or reserve team coaches into the first team environment because I've been very impressed with them, you know, and how they've worked and what their ideas are, you know, because you can never close our minds that because they're working with the academy, they can't teach you anything. They can teach you a lot. And I think that freshness as well from a coach's point of view is like a freshness of a young boy coming into a training environment. It's great, you know. And so no, I think it's to think that academy level coaches can't offer you anything is really a bit off-putting from my point of view. It's a bit silly. But I think from the point of view they can, but they can learn a great deal from you as well and go back to the environment that they're comfortable in. Some can't come into the first team environment, they don't enjoy it. The pressure is a bit too much. But it's like a player finding his own position, his own niche, and what he's excelling at. That might be the situation with coaches. You know, you've got to try to find out where it is that you're most comfortable with. And some are not comfortable in first team environments.
And from your perspective, when you were playing or when you've been coaching, were there any managers or coaches that you looked up to, were role models for you, who helped mentor you through the process of becoming a player and a coach?
Well, I had a few, Sean. I have to say, like I said before, the managers that I was fortunate to play for or under were some big names. I mean, Brian Clough was unbelievable. You know, he very rarely put a training session on, but one word came out of his mouth that was any encouragement, and you felt 10 foot tall. You know, his man management was absolutely magnificent. Ron Atkinson was the same. You know, when he was when he was at Sheffield Wednesday, when I was playing with him there. You know, he builds you up to you were unbeatable. You just felt 10 foot tall, like I said. And then on the other side of it, you got Ray Harford, who was a manager at Luton when we had a fantastic run then. Ray was a terrific coach. You know, he could put little things on. He'd make players feel comfortably technically, teach you lots of things. So yeah, there's lots of areas, lots of people I look up to, and you know, if you can take a little bit from all of them, but with your own personality, which I think is important. I don't think you can try and copy anybody. I think that's a big fault. You know, if you try and work in the same way, you know, you won't have that personality of the somebody that you're trying to copy. And I think you just got to be yourself as well, but with a sprinkling of help from people that you know.
When you were building your staff as a manager and you went into new clubs, is that what you looked at? You looked at the areas where, you know, you said to yourself, I'm a really good man manager, I'm really good at managing the people, but I need someone who can really help me with the details on the training field.
Yeah.
Do you look for coaches who could fill the gaps in your knowledge and help develop them in that way as well?
Without a doubt. And don't forget, you don't have to bring them in, they might already be there. Mm-hmm. You know, that this is what's important when you go into any football club. You've got to assess as quickly and as correctly as you possibly can all areas. You're not just talking about your playing side of it, you're talking about your coaching side of it as well. So generally you've got an idea of the coaches that's there already. If you've been around a little bit, you know, and you know the clubs, you'll end up knowing the manager you've just taken the place of, like, you know, he's just been sacked and you take his place, so you might know the club intimately, and you might know the coaches intimately. But what you will do, you'll come to a situation or a decision where you say, he's not right for me, or he's great for me, even better for me, because I like his calmness, I like the way that he's very clear to the players of what they want, but he's got a firmness about him. If it's a young coach or with young players, you know, they still need guidance. You just can't let them go run amok. So all those are taken into account, yeah. And I think that I've always done that. I've not always taken coaches with me into clubs. I have done a couple of occasions, but not always, because I always believe that the players that are at football clubs, if they've been there a certain amount of time, they've got some amount of talent, you know. So it's whether we get on together. There's situations on many times when we're not got on and we don't have the same outlook and the same philosophy, really. And I think once that happens, then you have to split, because you can't have you saying one thing, the coach saying another thing, and the players just sat in the middle thinking who you're taking notice of.
So I guess one last question for you, Danny, and this one goes out to all of the coaches who we've had joining us in the past and even today. If you had one piece of advice that you would give to a young coach looking to make their way in the game, develop into one to be at the highest level, or even develop into one to coach at a young and academy level, what would be the one piece of advice you would give to that coach?
I think nowadays there's so much things that's going on nowadays by your own FAs, your own football associations, whatever country you're working at. There's so many courses that go on. I think don't be put off by applying for one. Get as much experience as you possibly can. I mean, I think asking questions and not being afraid of it, embrace it. Get as much information as you possibly can. Get as much experience as you can. If you go into a football club, you get work placement. Even in only small club, just go in and do it. Even you're not going to get paid for it, but just go in and do it. Just experience what it's like to be around a football club. And I think that is priceless. Sometimes I think to get that type of experiences, you can't get it from a piece of paper. But I think more than anything, I think when you're out in a football club, I think communication is paramount, because whatever department you're in, whatever level of the club you're in, your communication is really, really paramount. So I would say that, and most of all, the lessons I was taught is to listen to people, and if you can, adapt to what they're listening to, and don't be too rigid you can't move.
Perfect. Danny, I really appreciate you taking the time to
you're
talk to us today. And all of the questions we had for you and all of the answers you gave, just hoping that they're really going to help our coaches continue to improve and develop. So
let's hope so.
Thank you again, Danny, and best of luck with everything.
You as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Danny.
Thanks, Sean.